It is January 18th, 2021, lesson 79 in A Course in Miracles student workbook. Let me see the problem so it can be solved. So, yesterday we introduced the concept of problems. And the concept of problems is that they're concepts. Really similar to how elephants are trained in the circus. They're chained young, and then when they're older, they have the capability to run away and be free. Yet, they have accepted and adopted the confinement of what that is, okay? Kind of similar to how we actually block ourselves from actually experiencing ourselves, our true potentials. When we look at problems, we look at the Kabbalion, right? We have our lower self and then our higher self. The Kabbalion is a triangle, square, and circle. Spirit, mind, and body. When the pendulum is swinging on the bottom half, we're looking at the cause and effect. And this is where individuals are trying to convince you of their problems. They're trying to justify these identities, okay? And as we learned, we are captives of our own identities. We are prisoners of our own creations, okay? Because it's what kept us safe for the longest time. These identities are our ego. When we're looking at the higher half, right, we're looking at harmonious ebb and flow, because now we're starting to understand that life is happening through us, not just to us or for us, because even with for us, there's a counter not for us. And we stop using words such as can't, won't, have, should, or shouldn't. Everything is perfect the way it's supposed to be, because now we're starting to understand what the present moment is actually presenting us. The ability to raise our consciousness at every single moment. Now, why is it that we forget this? Because when we look at I am, we try to have this self-inquisition of who am I? Like Ramana Maharshi did with most of his teachings. This is self-realization, because you start to realize what you actually are. And with self-realization, the process of self-awareness, self-exploration, discovery, you discover more, you understand more, you love more, you transform more, self-mastery, okay? But what occurs through that process of self-actualization, realizing your potentialities and talents, the ego is going to come in, right? It's going to deter you from your goals, or it's trying to convince you that it knows better because it's kept you safe for the longest time. And because it does this, and it even starts very young, because we see the world and we see people are just kind of look a little bit different than we do. And the ego is trying to keep you safe, so it starts to create this wanting to be separate. So from I goes to wanting to be separate, and from wanting to be separate, it goes to wanting to survive, to be secure, to be safe, and from there wants to have the wants for approval, for love. And because we've pulled our ways so far from ourselves, we forget what we are, that we are love. So we try to seek it on the outside world. We try to have some external factors that gratify that. And when we don't get that, when we don't have that feeling within ourselves, we'll seek it as if it were a drug, okay? So we want to control things. And when we want to change things to meet the inside world, we lose our power. And the only power that we have is what we are, because everything else is just outside of ourselves. When we realize that as you see the world, so are you, and that everything is a reflection, we start to see that we are something that has created some form of separateness, and that as above, so below, so within, so without. So the inner world is going to reflect the outer world. Most oftentimes, people let the outside world try to dictate who they are. They invent some form of self, and even allow them to kind of change what their self is. And that's what Jim Carrey says is depression, that your avatar is tired of the character that you've chosen to be. Instead of choosing to work with the inside so it can reflect on the outside. Now, when we are looking at our desires. Desire is the root of all suffering. We look at our attachments and our aversions. Our attachments are the things that we want, we care about, we prefer, we love, and our aversions are a little bit more trickier because now they dwell in the shadows, our subconscious and unconscious mind, the things that we don't want, that we don't love, that we avoid. And when we start to break these desires down, we look at our emotions. Our emotions are our ACFLAP, our apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, pride, okay? Our lower emotions, or 7 sins, if you want to call them that. And now we look at our positive emotions, our CAP, which is courageous, acceptance, peace, courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, love, joy, peace. Joy is unconditional love. And we even attach ourselves to these things without actually noticing that they're just experiences too. They're not what we are. We are the ones that experience these things within our bodies. And when we have taken that power back, that we are in the seat of awareness, we're starting to understand that we are not the sum of our experiences. We are the witness of our sum of experiences. Because now we're starting to understand our tendencies, our proclivities. We are looking at our feelings and how our feelings are influenced by our thinking. And of course, the thinking is basically dictated how the world is. Our thinking is basically our paradigm, our belief systems. So now we're looking at how our thinking and feeling influences our actions, and actions results, and results derive meaning that we have, thus creating our belief systems. And when we look at the lesson for today, it starts to say that problems can't be solved if you don't know what they are, okay? Even if really solved, you will still have the problem because you won't recognize that it is solved. Solution is not recognized because the problem is not recognized. So most oftentimes, when we're trying to seek love, this approval to feel safe within ourselves, we impose that on some form of money, fame, status, or somebody, or even a external power, God, putting these individuals there. And when they go away, we still feel that void. And that makes it difficult for us to understand that we were the ones that created that joy and peace and love within ourselves, because that's what we are. We are the manifestations of love. We have been created by love, and love is the universal law. So the other problem with that is that sometimes we don't even recognize our problems because they've been so repressed or suppressed. And because the ego has taken hold, we see that the only problem that we actually have is separateness. So when we're separated from source, from ourselves, from our true selves, or Christ, or Buddha, or Atman, then we start to see things differently because we feel like we're different, that our special problems need special solutions, and we'll never be free of them because, again, we are captives of our own identities, prisoners of our own creations. This problem of separation makes it difficult for us to even become self-actualized because we doubt our abilities, right? Self-actualization is the realization of potentialities and talents, and it makes us feel inadequate, right? So we become disappointed with ourselves so often that we become discouraged. And now failure is inevitable because now we're looking at our actions, and sometimes they become reactions to the results that we have, and we're deriving meaning from that, and then now we believe that we're failures, okay? That is inevitable. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And even when we have new ones and we can solve them, new ones start popping up, and it becomes, again, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because when we are creating that cloud of denial, these are our stories. These are our demons. These are the things that pop up in the most inconvenient times, and then they go back. And we feel like it's the outside world that is not tailoring to us. But really, it's what we're emanating out. It's the emotions that we feel about ourselves, because that's what we're manifesting. So, for example, you may not think that you're going to have a car accident, but you're thinking about being lonely, that you want a girlfriend, and then you get in a car accident, and then you try to call everybody, okay? And nobody answers. Why? Because they're busier, or, they can't at the moment. And then you feel lonely, right? Abandoned. And that's what had manifested, because it's not just the mind that is creating these problems, it's also how we feel about ourselves that is creating the problems. And when these demons pop up, it won't allow us to actually be imperturbable, to be undisturbed, because it isn't until we actually say that we have let this go 100% that we are done with it. If we can think of something that we can make up, that means that the mind subconsciously at some level actually believes that. And that is the failure to recognize the problem for its entirety, if that makes sense. So we have to really dig deep when it comes to these problems. Sometimes when we're wanting things to be different, then we start having all these other emotions because our mind has created some form of chess to put us in check, okay? Because you'll want to fix it, you'll want to change it, you'll want to control it, you want things to be different or want to know what to do. And again, you won't know what to do until you're put in a situation, right? You will access the knowledge at the right place, right time, not a moment before or after. That's what the present moment is, because that's the only moment that you actually have. And every moment is designed for the evolution of your consciousness. And how do you know that? Because this is the moment that you're having right now. So you have to see the moments that you're trying to make it personal, or that you think it's because of you or who you are or them or who they are, right? That you're blaming them or wanting to make it real again. You're trying to relive this over and over again. I know I'm guilty of it constantly. And that's how I manifest that too. And then, or you're trying to control their experience of things or be right, know what's best for them. We do that with children sometimes. We do that with our siblings. We even do that with our parents and families and loved ones. We want them to be controlled so we can love them, be a certain way so we can love them, or want them to be a certain way so we can feel safe so they won't hurt us. Sometimes it's very impossible for us to even just simply love for no reason at all, unconditionally love, just for who they are, right? Not trying to control their experience, because you can just let them just unfold the way that it is. Or the moment that you see these reasons, right, you try to justify, right? You try to defend or explain yourself over and over again, trying to reinforce that ego, that identity. You resist them, you resist yourself, you even resist the resistance because it's just too much for you to handle in your body and in your mind. You want to believe that once again. And it's very much trying to hold that close, okay? It's almost like the ego is trying to have you coddle it. And that's sometimes the wounded child, or the absent adolescent, or the abandoned adolescent. You see that so often because it is love, and you're trying to seek it on the outside world because you don't feel it for yourself, and you're the only one that can do that. You're the one that could create meaning within your suffering. And once you see through that story, that thought, that image, that spin dissolves, okay? Because what you're trying to do is wanting to punish yourself. And that wanting to punish yourself is some form of, masochistic necessity to feed that pain body, right? That pain body is the thing that needs pain. It feeds off it. And when you see through that veil, right, you see the burden, right? And you see the drama behind it most oftentimes, because we confuse drama with trauma. And then sometimes you even see the trauma, right? Because it's real. And you have to let that go, right? You let that disappear in the ether, because when it stops bothering you, it ceases to exist in the old way. And even if you can do it just a little bit, you're chiseling this iceberg for you to actually become free. And that's really what we're trying to do every single moment, because without that moment, then we don't allow ourselves to see what it is, because we can even create ourselves with a spiritual ego. And the only antidote for a spiritual ego is humility, because the humble cannot be humiliated. So there are no problems. The only problems that you create are the ones that you believe in. And if the law of belief says that you are your beliefs and your feelings, then think about what you are creating at every single moment.